What it do, everybody? The Who Dat Nation. It is your boy Who Dat Davis here for it, joined by his co-host and official queen of Saints Twitter, my personal dove, Nicole. If you don't know, you will know that over here that we bleed black and gold until we are dead and cold. And thank you guys for joining us for today's episode of the Black and Gold Breakdown Podcast. I would say happy Monday, but it is anything but if you're a New Orleans Saints fan. As the New Orleans Saints took on the Atlanta Falcons at home yesterday, and they lost 27-25 in a heartbreaking fourth quarter last comeback hurrah from our hated rivals, the Atlanta Falcons. Nicole, some players are going on the hot seat today. I say more than one.
Yeah, multiple. At least four.
At least four. I definitely agree with that. Frustrating time to be a New Orleans Saints fan. The Saints, they have to find a way to get it together offensively. They have to find a way to get it together defensively, not just in the front four, but in the back half as well. The Saints are giving up way too many big plays in the back end. It's very uncharacteristic from them from how they started the year, but we're going to get into all of that and a little bit more today as we have my main mans. You guys know him. You guys are on Twitter. Chris Rosvoglou, the host of Straight Up Saints Podcast. His Twitter is Rosvoglou Report. Chris, welcome to the show once again, brother. How's your day?
Considering the Saints lost to the Falcons, it's not bad. I'm not gonna lie. I'm just, I told people on my own show, we gotta find ways, especially with this Saints team, not to let the losses hurt as much because they're kind of playing with house money this whole year. And I mean, yesterday's loss obviously was frustrating, but the Saints actually got very fortunate. Almost every single NFC team that could have gained ground on the Saints didn't do that outside of Atlanta, obviously. So it's a really frustrating loss, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it changes as much as us, Saints fans might think it does.
Yeah, it was the weirdest week for Saints football if you're a top contending team, not just in the NFC, but the AFC as well. The Jags only scored 6 points against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who only scored 9. The Titans done upset the Rams in their home stadium. Cowboys got spanked by the Denver Broncos. Cleveland beat up on the Bengals. So I don't know what's going on. I think it was just like a cursed week or something scripted by the NFL. I don't know what it was. But it was definitely the weirdest week so far this season for most teams. But we're going to get into all that. First, we're going to be starting off my first question. Of course, we have to talk about the main issue for the New Orleans Saints. It is the wide receiver position. Trevor Siemian threw dots all over the field. He hit five passes in the hands to receivers. It was dropped. The most egregious one was a fourth down drop to tight end Adam Troutman, who I have as my player to be put on the hot seat today in our aired out edition of B&G Breakdown. Chris, my question to you is, what do the Saints have to do to fully address this issue with our pass catchers?
I mean, what really stinks about the whole situation is I don't think it gets fixed this year. Now, if the Saints sign Odell Beckham, I think that definitely kind of, I would say, lowers the issue. But even if they get Odell Beckham, which, obviously fingers crossed that does happen, there are still issues here because it's not as if the guys aren't getting open anymore. That used to be the problem. They weren't getting separation. Now there's actually enough separation with the way Sean's scheming it, and they're just not catching the football. Kenny Stills had a couple of drops. I know Adam Troutman just got, dragged through Twitter with the way he played in the first half of that game. And honestly, the only wide receiver who's really stepped up this whole season is Deontay Harris. I think he's kind of taken his game to that next level, at least I would say. But the big problem was before last week, I would say, a lot of us, doesn't matter if you're a fan, podcaster, analyst, insider, whatever, a lot of us said, okay, the receiving core is bad, but when Michael Thomas comes back, that kind of fixes everything because everyone drops down a peg. Well, now we know he's not coming back, which obviously hurts. And you're kind of stuck with the situation you have, and I think the only way you really fix it is next offseason. But if you're talking about right now, I think the only, I would say, saving grace is if you are able to sign Odell Beckham. Outside of that, I think you are dealing with some days the pass catchers are going to step up and make a great catch like Callaway did against the Patriots or Callaway did against Washington. But other than that, I think you're really heavy ground game. Defense has to carry you, play good on special teams, and just hope that some receivers step up. It's going to be really tough. If OBJ comes in, maybe I'll reassess. But right now, I think it's a group that you're kind of stuck with what you have.
Ugh, that's unfortunate. All right, Nicole, my queen, I turn it over to you. What you got?
Um, one player that really pissed me off yesterday until he redeemed himself was Kenny Stills. Because why is a receiver able to do things, not doing things as simple as catching the damn ball? Like, why? That was him and Troutman were my top two piss offs. And then Stills kind of redeemed himself there at the end. Troutman, to me, he's only good for blocking, and that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I definitely think that's fair also. But a good question coming up about the tight end spot. I'll dig into Adam Troutman in a bit because I got quite a bit to say. But the tight end position, as much grief, because I will play a little bit of saving grace here for Adam Troutman. I will be a temporary defender because I've been defending him on Twitter for the longest time. He's making me look bad. But this tight end room outside of Adam Troutman is still very young and inexperienced. Last week, Garrett Griffin had three receptions, and going into that game, he had one in his entire career. Juwan Johnson, for some reason, was inactive, which I believe was a foolish decision. And honestly, the biggest disappointment is Nick Van Nett. Because when you look at this receiving room without Nick Van Nett, you have your group is spearheaded by a receiver, a tight end that is only in his second year in the NFL. He's still young. He's still very inexperienced. You have a receiver flexed out as a tight end to create mismatches in the passing game. And a tight end that isn't even remotely used as a tight end, more like a fullback in your scheme. I think the main issue is they don't have a veteran they can rely on. And I think that answer could be that could be fixed in short order because the Lions just released Darren Fells, a 35-year-old who had 80% catch rate last year, which goes along with a 72% career catch rate as a pass-catching tight end. So, Nick, my question is, even though we have a lot of issues with the wide receivers, do you consider the tight end spot a more crucial area the Saints need to address first?
I'm leaning no. I don't know about you guys.
Ooh.
No, we need receivers more than tight end right now.
Are you sure about that? Ooh, okay. So I'm the minority here. Okay, that's fine. Look, I completely understand. I'm still of the opinion that we're not going to get Odell Beckham, and the Saints have plenty of opportunities to prove me wrong within the next 24 hours. But in my opinion, I think the tight end spot just has more room for improvement with a veteran like Darren Fells. Like Adam Troutman's previous mentor was Jared Cook. Think about that for a second. Jared Cook, not much of a blocker. He's doing his thing over in Los Angeles. I'll give him that, but he only had Jared Cook for a year. There's not much experience or leadership that's in that locker room right now. Whereas the receiving spot, even though they definitely needs improvements there too, you still have guys like, Kenny Stills, like Nicole said earlier, he redeemed himself in the second half. You have
Kenny Stills who can't catch a ball.
But to your point, he redeemed himself in the second half. Okay, so I don't know. I guess I'm just of the minority there. But okay, Chris, my next question to you would be the secondary for the New Orleans. Let's flip to the defense for a second. When the Saints score, like last week, which is yesterday, mind you, the Saints couldn't stop the deep throw, not only the deep ball, but the intermediate threat. And that's been a consistent issue for 2 weeks now. The week before against Tampa, Chris Godwin shredded them in an intermediate with the shallow crosses and the deep digs over the middle of the field. He went for 140 yards. And the same thing happened last week against the Atlanta Falcons now, who went over, I would say, 126 for Cordero Patterson, and Kyle Pitts, who went, I believe, 3 for 62. My question to you, Chris, is what's going on with the New Orleans Saints secondary, and why do you think they are having this much issues with defending the middle of the field?
I mean, I think the middle of the field It is what it is. I think that's what the Saints are kind of willing to give up right now, specifically the underneath. Yesterday, I don't think it was like they couldn't cover the underneath. I think they were willing to give up the underneath. Whether or not that's a smart play, I thought yesterday was kind of the foolish play because Atlanta really doesn't have a lot of weapons right now. And then with Calvin Ridley obviously taking a leave of absence due to mental health reasons, it's kind of just Patterson and Pitts were the two guys that are going to beat you. So I didn't really understand why they were giving up the underneath. For other games, I think they're willing to give it up because the one thing the Saints don't want to do is get beat deep. That being said, and I love the guy, Marcus Williams has to play a little bit better. The last 2 games, he's been a little bit sloppy, and I'm as big of a Marcus Williams fan as it gets. I think he has to pick up the slack a little bit more. But there's a couple people asking about the defense. Should we start getting concerned? I think it's just so hard to play elite defense consistently throughout an NFL season that there's going to be a couple of rough patches. And let's be real. If it wasn't for that one, I would just say the third quarter is kind of where I felt like the Saints defense was giving up a little bit. For the most part, they played pretty consistent. I mean, 10 points given up in the first half is fine. And in the fourth quarter, you take out that last drive, they kind of turned it on in terms of the pass rush, whether it was Davenport or Cam Jordan. So the secondary, the real concern for me is how serious is Gardner Johnson's injury. I think it's pretty serious just by going off the tweets, going by him getting carted off. I would assume that it's serious, but obviously we'll wait to get an official report there. That would be my concern, but I think this secondary will bounce back. I think this defense as a whole bounces back. It was just you're playing against a guy that knows you, Matt Ryan. I thought Matt Ryan probably had his best game of the season yesterday. And then the week before, going up against the Bucs are pretty much going to shred almost every defense at this point. And even though they got shredded last week, they came up with the crucial pick. Had the Saints come up with a crucial stop this past game against the Falcons, I think the narrative changed a little bit. So are there concerns? Yes. Do I think the Saints can bounce back and will shake back from it? I also would say yes to that.
A good point. I didn't realize that the Saints played division rivals back to back. For some reason, my mind just went gone. But that is a fair point. The New Orleans Saints face back to back division opponents who know them very well, like the back of their own hand. Especially the Atlanta Falcons. We know we don't give Matt Ryan his credit for being a guy that knows Sean Payton did his talent. He's played against him more times than anybody in his history. So, and to be able to still come away with only a 2-point loss says a lot to the resilience of this defense, the resiliency of the team. Shout out to Trevor Siemian for leading that fourth quarter comeback. I was going to have shades of 2017 against Washington all over again. But Nicole, I turn it over to you. What questions or question do you have for our boy here, Chris?
Shit, where do I start? Honestly, do you feel like Peyton and DA kind of played it safe yesterday with their play styles and their coaching, or were they just like, I don't know, it just seemed different to me. So was it different to you?
I think defensively, I think you can say that the Saints kind of, I'm not going to say played it safe, but at least defensively there was a lot of zone early on in the game. I didn't feel like they were playing up to their potential, especially in that third quarter. I thought that was a little rough. Offensively speaking, I don't even think they went conservative. I just think guys were not making plays because they ran the ball extremely well the opening drive. I thought that would set the tone. And then after that, it was just a drop from Stills, a drop on fourth down from Troutman, which, by the way, that was a huge drop because had he catch that, the Saints are going to get in the red zone, and then we'll see what happens there. Maybe they score on that drive. So that was obviously a critical point in the game. So I don't think the Saints really played it conservative, offensively speaking. Defensively, I do think they played it a little conservative, and then kind of towards the end of the game, they unleashed it. But I will add this, too. Had the Saints defensive line finished on a couple of plays early in the game, maybe our mindset of what we were watching would have changed a little bit. It didn't help that for some reason Matt Ryan was just scrambling and getting out of a lot of pressure. So I think that definitely changed the way we might perceive that performance. But if I'm going to pick a side, I would say the defense played a little bit more conservative. The offense, guys are just not making plays right now.
Yeah,
the offense, like those two-point conversions, those really threw me off. Because if the first one didn't work, why would we go for the second one?
Well, allow me to answer that one real quick before you do, Chris. I'm of the opinion that the decision to go for 2 was actually the right choice to make in those particular situations. Look at, the first touchdown, you have to go for 2 because you don't know, your defense is giving up too many big plays. You don't know for sure if they can come back. So you have to close the gap as quickly as possible. Now, the execution is a different matter altogether, but the decision itself to go for 2 in those moments, it definitely, I don't think, deserves scrutiny. Sean Payton called as good of a game as you possibly could have on offense, just the lack of execution. The first 2-point conversion, you throw Trevor Siemian's going through his reads. Adam Troutman, another one of these saving graces for him. He was wide open initially, but Trevor Siemian was just late getting him the ball. He was going on the out route on the far side of the field. It was a good decision. It was just too late, and he should have thrown it more towards the pylon, have Troutman come back to the ball instead of backpedaling towards the back of the end zone. And, because he had that outside leverage, should have thrown to the outside shoulder. The second one, I get it. You put it in the hands of Alvin Kamara. He's your best player in that situation. He's been getting you those tough yards. He's at over, I believe it was close to 3 yards a carry. I think he can get that, get those short 2 yards. It's just he slipped. It was just poor execution, not much push up and offensive line. So it was very unfortunate. But Chris, now it's your turn. What do you think about those 2-point conversion decisions?
I liked the decision to go for 2 both times. I thought in terms of logistically speaking, it made sense because the first one, had they converted, it would have been 24-21 instead of 24-19. So that made sense for sure. And then the second one, obviously, had they converted that, you're talking about being up 27-24 instead of only 25-24. If they get that, you're probably looking at an overtime game between the two of these teams. But my big issue I had with those, the first one, all right, I do agree with you. Adam Troutman was open. Trevor Siemian was late, and then it ends up kind of just being a jump ball to him. You're not going to win that battle, so that's just a waste of a play. The second time around, I totally am okay with the idea, like you put the ball in your best player's hand and you hope he converts. But, and again, this really just depends on whether or not Sean feels comfortable with him risking, his body right now. One of those 2 plays should have been a Taysom Hill power run. I just think that at some point, defenses need to prove they consistently can stop that play in the red zone, which they have not done. And if they do that, then I think for the Saints, it makes sense. Maybe a run with Kamara, maybe a throw to Troutman, fine. But I think especially this season, so many teams have struggled to defend that one particular play that at least 1 out of 2 times, had they ran it both times, I guarantee you at least one time it would have worked. And I just was very surprised by that. I think the usage of Taysom Hill in this game overall, but specifically on the 2-point conversions, that confused the heck out of me.
Do you think it has something to do with him this being his first game back from a serious concussion that sidelined him for 3 weeks? That was my initial thought. No use of Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston going down due to torn ACL. I think you don't want to I don't think you want to expose a Taysom Hill to that type of physicality just yet. Due to everything surrounding him, because concussions are very tricky. You don't know what kind of lingering injuries or lingering side effects they can have on you. So, do you think that had something to do with the lack of offensive plays for Taysom?
I think it's possible. I think there were so many factors. I definitely think that was one of them, though, because remember, he did start the week as a limited participant. So I think until he's like a full-on 4 straight days, can practice full, maybe they feel a little bit more comfortable. Let's see how he rebounds from today. If there's no problems, I think that the Saints might feel, like you said, a little bit more inclined to use him. I think another thing is it's a feel-out process. I think they wanted to see what was this offense going to be like with Siemian for a full game with a full game plan. And honestly, I thought it went a lot better than it could have. It would have been even better had the receivers actually caught the ball on a consistent basis. And then the third one, I think it's a give and take, and it's going to be very difficult now. Without Jameis Winston, you have to be really careful with Taysom Hill, because as much as you want to go full go, what happens if Trevor Siemian gets hurt and then Taysom gets hurt on a run or something? Then you're down to Ian Book. And then that's where you basically just wave the white flag and the season's over. Where, God forbid, Siemian goes down, if you still have Taysom Hill in your back pocket, I'm not saying Taysom Hill's going to lead the Saints to some type of glorious playoff run, but I'm at the point with the way this defense plays, with the way the ground game is, even if Taysom Hill was a starter, they're probably still a wild card team. So I think it's an interesting give and take. I'm very curious to see how they use him next week against Tennessee, because Tennessee's a very physical football team, and they're going to need to use him. But I think there's a lot of factors, with the 2 important ones being Siemian, trying to get a feel for him, and then, like you said, the concussion. He's only 3 practices in since having it.
All right, I got one more question, then we're going to turn to Nicole, followed by the air it out portion, and then we're going to close it out. My next question here is just the linebackers. You know I'm a linebacker guy. I love those guys that can fly around the field and hit people, and I love it. So the one thing I noticed in this game is Pete Werner only had 12 snaps in this game. Quan Alexander had the majority of the snaps, but he seemed to have struggled a little bit in coverage. My question to you, Chris, I don't understand the lack of usage of Pete Werner in this game. Having only 12 snaps, he's been a very fantastic linebacker for you. Not only in the run in just a run game, but he's proven that he can cover tight ends. He can cover, running backs. Now, admittedly, not to the degree that Quan Alexander can, because he's faster with more experience, but when you see Quan Alexander struggling, you would think you would see more of Pete Werner in this game, and we just haven't. So what are your thoughts about that?
My initial thought, I agree. I think Pete Werner – I've been saying it since day one. Until Pete Werner shows that he can't handle a starting role, I think you have to start him because you have a second-round pick invested in him. I've been very impressed with the way he's played. I think, though, there must have been something during the week when the Saints were going through film that they thought playing Quan Alexander – in terms of matchup-wise, made the most sense for them. That would be the assumption. But on the flip side, the Saints also put Quan in terrible situations. I do think Pete Werner should start over Quan Alexander. But I don't care if it's Pete Werner or Quan Alexander. When you have a situation where they're matched up one-on-one against Cordell Patterson's going to win 9 times out of 10. So they kind of hung them out to dry in that regard. I thought when Werner was in limited snaps, he did make great plays, and I think it's, when you're playing a physical team, let's say next week like Tennessee, I think maybe that's where you want to go a lot more Pete Werner than you did this past week. I'm still confused that he only had 12 snaps. In the 12 snaps he played, I thought he was excellent. But again, it's also a difficult balance because Quan, even when he's struggling, he does have that kind of contagious energy that feeds off to the other players, and it's very hard to balance which one you want to go with. I'm gonna go chalk it up to saying the Saints thought there was a mismatch or an advantage with playing Quan. But I'm going to continue to bang the same drum at the same time that I would probably keep playing Pete Werner until he proves that he can't handle a big workload.
Nicole, what do you think about Pete Werner's lack of usage in this game?
Pretty much the same thing that Chris said. I don't know why they wouldn't use him over Quan. Granted, I am one of Quan Alexander's most diehard people. I will die on the hill that him and Janoris Jenkins should retire as Saints. But for me, it's the best fit needs to play, and veteranship does not matter. If a rookie can play better, if a rookie fits better against a certain team, we need to use him. We need to utilize him. 12 snaps out of God, however many defense played yesterday, it's just not utilizing him enough to the point where it could do something, because he really could have changed something yesterday in that role instead of Quan.
I definitely can agree with that. Quan Alexander had 41 snaps as opposed to Pete Werner's 12, so pretty big margin. Okay, the segment everybody's been waiting on. We are entering the Air It Out edition where we put certain players or a certain position group in the hot seat. I'm starting with the tight ends. Even though the receivers were god-awful, I'm sure you guys have your takes on that. I'm putting Adam Trautman in the hot seat because, goddammit, that dude made me look terrible defending him over the last 3 weeks. I've said even now, he's still a young tight end, second year, all this stuff, but that fourth down crucial drop literally slipped through his hands. When he was coming out of Dayton, he had his school record of 14 receiving touchdowns, and almost half of those were bombs. I've watched this film. So you went from being a pass-catching tight end in college to somehow losing your hands when you turn into the pros. It's very, very confusing for me. This dude needs to get it together if you're going to be featured in the passing game. He needs to get it together because I can't keep defending him at this point. As much as I have been, I can't keep defending him when he makes these god-awful plays. Now I see he's an above average run blocker right now. I still say he's still a top 10 blocking tight end. But as a pass catcher, I wouldn't trust him with a 10-foot pole. I wouldn't trust him for my life in those gotta happen situations. And until he proves me otherwise, he should not be getting the football in those moments. I'm still mad that Sean Payton and the Saints somehow chose to keep Juwan Johnson as a healthy and active for this game. Now, you may have gone into this game thinking you can run the football, but Juwan Johnson is your mismatch guy. That's the reason why he's there in the first place in that locker, in that position room. And he's a healthy and active. That's very confusing. That tight end room failed. It failed. It failed. And I can't give him a pass. As long as regardless of the flashes of good they had. I can't do it. And it starts with Adam Trautman as the leader right now. And Nick Van Nette's the biggest disappointment. I want that dude off the team. I want him off the team. I don't care who they have to replace it with. I don't care if it's Darren Fells. I don't care who you have to call in free agency. Get this man off my team. He has not played a single snap for the New Orleans Saints since he was signed in the offseason. And they need a veteran in that locker room. If Nick Van Nett is not going to be there, he is a waste of a roster spot. Chris, hot seat. Who you got?
I mean, I usually try to keep it pretty, kind on the players, unless they really get on me. I mean, Adam Trautman, obviously, I think is a pretty easy one, but I'm going to go a different route. I'm going to go back to what I was saying before. I still think he's a fine player. But this is about as big of a year as it gets for Marcus Williams in terms of financially speaking, long-term security. You ball out, even if it's not the Saints, someone is going to pay you. And again, I think the Saints obviously are going to have interest in keeping Marcus Williams long-term. But had it not been the Saints, I'm telling you, there were so many teams, especially this past offseason, that were lining up. Teams like the Jaguars were ready to throw a boatload of money at Marcus Williams. And I still think Marcus Williams will get that money. That being said, he has not made a huge play for this team in about 3 weeks. I think it's time that he gets back to that form. I don't think it's really something where I'm just seriously concerned, but he's taking a lot of odd angles to the football. That's something he always does anyway, but he needs to limit that a little bit more. And you're going up against a Tennessee team next week that I've seen at least Ryan Tannehill be turnover prone. The following week are going to go up against the Eagles offense that I don't know if they're coming or going. Last week they were going. A couple of weeks they're not. But I think this is the opportunity here for the next 2-3 weeks for him to get on a little bit of a streak. He hasn't had to force a turnover, and I believe, since the Giants game. So it's been a while in that. I'm not trying to rip on him. I still think he's a fine football player. But I view Marcus Williams as an excellent football player, and he's not playing like that right now. So I think Marcus Williams has to step up a little bit more.
So we got Adam Trautman for me. I'm Marcus Williams for Chris. Nicole, who do you got as your hot seat player or position group for the week?
Paulson Adebo. And I have my reasoning. The past few weeks, I just haven't seen anything extremely big from him. I mean, he's made a few impact plays, but yesterday, I have been defending him because of yesterday from the jump. I get it, you're a rookie. This is your developmental year. And that situation with Kyle Pitts yesterday, that little 62, 64 yards, that was, excuse my French, that was bullshit. But I honestly feel like he underestimated Pitts because he was a tight end. And Pitts is a tight end that can move like a receiver. That dude is fast as hell. So it really made no sense for him to go in there and underestimate Pitts. But I guarantee you he's going to look back on that film and he's not going to do that shit again. Honestly. And that's why I've been defending him like crazy on social media, because people are like, Paulson Adebo doesn't need to touch the field again. It's not that. He's a rookie. And I'm not using that as an excuse, but rookie years are developmental years. And I feel like the people that he's under and the veterans that are over him, they're going to coach him out of that. I know that play is something that's going to stick with him. It's just one of those that sticks with the athletes forever. So I strongly feel like his veterans are just going to bring him out of that slump and try to help him. But that was my main issue yesterday, was that whole play against Pitts with Adebo.
Only one correction I have on that. It wasn't Kyle Pitts he gave it the reception to. It was Cordell Patterson. Very deceptive guy.
Oh, see, I was at work, so I thought it was Pitts because I heard Pitts' name. I was streaming at work, but I was not fully paying attention. That is my fault.
Nah, you're good. It happens. Yeah, it was Cordell Patterson who went, I believe it was 126 in total yards, was it, Chris? Or was it 201? In 201 all-purpose yards.
For Patterson?
Yeah.
Patterson finished, I believe it was with actually a little bit less. I think he only had 10 rushing yards. So the Saints bottled him up in that regard, but receiving-wise, I can tell you because I have him on my fantasy team. He played pretty damn well, which obviously on the flip side, that's not what I want. But, he actually finished that game with 6 catches for 126 yards.
6 catches, 126. That's absolutely terrible. They gave up a 140 to Chris Godwin, 126 to Cordero Patterson. Secondary needs to get its act together. But we can't end the show on a negative note. We got to end on a positive note. I believe an honorable mention should go to Trevor Siemian. Trevor Siemian did everything he could to keep the Saints offense in rhythm, to keep them in the game. Of course, we could give it to Alvin Kamara, but that's a given. Alvin Kamara is going to do Alvin Kamara-like things. But for Trevor Siemian to have his second career start with the New Orleans Saints against a bitter rival and the Atlanta Falcons, I believe Trevor Siemian doesn't get enough praise around the Houdat Nation. Sean Payton went on to say that he's said non-committal on who he's going to start next week against Tennessee Titans. But I believe Siemian, until he shows that he's no longer deserving of the starting role, I think they should continue rolling with the hot hand and go with Trevor Siemian. Chris, you talked a little bit about Trevor Siemian on Twitter, but for everybody here that's kind of shaky about Trevor Siemian and his play yesterday, what would you say that would give these guys encouragement going forward with Trevor Siemian as starting quarterback?
I think it's pretty simple. Trevor Siemian can't throw and catch the football at the same time. And if he's going to put it in the guy's arms, he's going to hit him in the numbers. That's all you really can ask for. And there was a couple of plays where he was under fire, and he was making pretty good throws, especially the first Kenny Stills drop. If you go watch that play, he got lit up on that. And for him to make a tough throw like that, I think that speaks a lot. For him to rebound after the strip sack in the fourth quarter and basically just have 3 straight really successful drives, I think that's also promising. And I think that you're down 24-6, it's very easy to mail it in, and the Saints did not. I think that's also encouraging. I think the worst possible scenario for the Saints would be they lose this game and Trevor Siemian looked awful. He did not look awful. Had his receivers actually caught the ball, you're probably looking at him throwing for about 300 yards, and that would have been a very fine first start. I still think he's fine over the last 7 quarters that we've seen him play. There's nothing that's been there to alarm me. And mind you, I'm a guy who kind of thought the Saints were going to go with Taysom Hill once Jameis went down. And after a week, I'm willing to say, like, I think this is the right route, at least for now, to go with Trevor Siemian. I think he's been fine.
One quick note. If you add up all the drops the receivers had in that game, Trevor Siemian would have had over 340 yards in total passing yards. 340 in his second game. Pretty darn impressive. Nicole, what are your thoughts about Trevor Siemian and how he played yesterday for the Saints?
Trevor Siemian, he balled the fuck out. But quarterbacks cannot ball out if they don't have wide receivers with that same mentality. And right now, we do not have an OBJ. We do not have a Mike T. We do not have a very physical wide receiver who's just going to go out there and do what he has to do. So Trevor played great. The receivers have to catch the damn ball. They have to be there. They have to figure it out at this point because they're making him look bad as a quarterback when he's not a bad quarterback at all. Trevor Siemian is extremely decent, and I think if we get him some very, very good help in the receiver and tight end position, he'll be even better.
Speaking of receivers, I know you guys have your eyes on Odell Beckham, but in the off chance they don't get him, is there any other receivers out there that you guys may have your eye on? Personally, I wouldn't mind Golden Tate, Alshon Jeffrey, veteran guys that have good hands. I wouldn't mind them coming to the Saints. Chris, you eyeing anybody?
I mean, not really, but if I had to twist my arm and pick one, I think Golden Tate would be fine because you're talking about with the way this offense runs with Siemian, it's a lot of stuff over the middle of the field, a lot of intermediate passing, and I think that's kind of where he's thrived his whole career. I think Alshon Jeffrey at this point, unfortunately, his best days are over. They've been gone for a while, and I think once that athleticism kind of leaves you when you're a big-bodied guy like him, you see the production drop off. I think maybe you can squeeze out a productive game or two out of Golden Tate, but on the flip side, I'll say no one has signed him yet, and I think that does give me a little pause for concern as to where he's at in terms of football shape and how much he's got left in the tank. But it's kind of – and I know it sounds terrible because if they don't sign him, people are going to panic, although it is what it is. Saints Twitter panics all the time. I think it's kind of Odell or bust at this point if you're going to get any decent production out of your receivers.
Ooh, true that. I didn't think about that. Nicole, do you eyeing anybody if the off chance OBJ – doesn't come to good old Big Easy?
Golden Tate me, please. I agree with the two of you. Hands down. It's Golden Tate. I mean, no one else really just has the appeal that would fit in. with our offensive system. So
Marquis Lee, got some suggestions in the comments. Got Marquis Lee, got Perriman. I believe they're talking about Prashad Perriman. Wasn't he playing with the Bears?
Yeah, he was actually waived over the weekend.
Oh, was he? Damn. Well, that's concerning. If you can't make it with the Bears. Well, hey, anything's possible. Anything could be a potential upgrade at this point as the number one receiver for the Saints. So no options should be left unexplored, in my opinion. But that's going to do it for today's episode of the Black and Gold Breakdown podcast, considering of your boy, Hudak Davis, the Queen Nicole, and, of course, one of the GOATs, the all-time GOATs down here, and Chris Rosvoglou, host of Straight Up Saints podcast. Go check out his podcast down there, Straight Up Saints, and make sure you subscribe to Boot Crew Media. All those fun things will be linked down in the comment section immediately following this video. We gotta get ready for the Tennessee Titans. So look for a next podcast Thursday or Friday from me and Nicole and Chris. You're always welcome to come back anytime, man. As always. Does anybody have any final remarks before we get up out of here?
I'll make it real quick. I know a lot of Saints fans are kind of panicking and whatnot, and I'll put it real quick. Before yesterday, I thought the Saints were a playoff team. After yesterday, I still think the Saints are a playoff team. Before yesterday, I did not think the Saints are a Super Bowl contender. After yesterday, I still do not obviously think that the Saints are a Super Bowl contender. So they're right where I think they are. They're 5-3. I think they will finish 10-7, and I think that there's a lot of panic right now over one loss, but if it doesn't spiral out of control, and history's told us under Sean Payton it usually doesn't spiral out of control, I think this team will be fine. I think the NFC's a mess, and I think the Saints will make a playoff game. And whether or not they win that, I'm not here to speculate. But I think that this loss is going to be a little, I'll say exaggerated because it came to Atlanta. But I still think this team is where they need to be.
Nicole, any final remarks?
pretty much the same thing as Chris. I mean, it's not good, but it's not absolutely terrible. I'm pretty content with where we are. I mean, yesterday, I'm not even mad about yesterday's loss because I knew at least one loss to the Falcons was coming this year, especially after Jameis went down. So, like, it's not like burning down. So I'm pretty content with it right now.
One thing we can all agree on, this is going to be the most entertaining Saints season we've had in a very, very long time. So whether you're pessimistic or optimistic, just sit here, kick back, enjoy the ride. All right, that's officially going to do it for us today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you hit that like button down there. You hit that subscribe button. Make sure you check out Chris's podcast at Straight Up Saints and Boot Crew Media. Once again, all those fun things we will link down in the comment section immediately following this video. And as always, you guys don't know, you will know that over here, we all bleed black and gold, no matter what, until we are dead and cold. We will see you guys again Thursday or Friday as we talk a little more about the Saints and the Tennessee Titans. We will see y'all later. Deuces.